Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I thought I'd pop by and we'd do a journal spread. Excuse me. Now I've got a couple of pages here, as you can see, where the ink, let's just do this, where the ink has seeped through. So I may as well work on that page that has got the touches of brown on anyway. So I'm going to use that page. Now, if you don't want things to seep through to the next page, you can quite easily put a piece of copy paper underneath, or if you want to have the moisture absorbed, you can easily put a piece of the kitchen towel underneath. First of all, decide which side you want to work on. Do I want to work on this side? No, I'm just going to work on this side and go for it. It's a lumpy and bumpy side, but we can put a book underneath. So if I find a book, so I often keep this old diary and then I can just put it underneath if I haven't got any, anything sort of stable under there. Now, because I've got the browns on there, I'm obviously going to use some brown ink. And I thought what I'll do is I'll use some, actually I've just thought I might use mowed lawn. I always decide I want a certain colour. Bundle sage is quite nice. Where's mowed lawn? So I thought I would use brown with some greens. I love that combination. Let me just move this all on one side. I haven't tidied my desk, so I've got bits and pieces everywhere, to be honest. Let's move this out of the way. So what I'm going to do first is, when you see that blank page, you think, oh, well, for me, the blank page is already broken because I've got these touches of brown on here. So that's already broken the page for me, and that's already decided for me what I'm going to do on that page. So if you don't want anything sipping underneath, then you can use some kitchen towel. It's entirely up to you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the, of course, have I got the one? Do you know, you can't make it up, can you? The one stencil I think I've got, I haven't, the packaging's here. So I've got ST4 stencil batch. It's 6x6 inch stencil. And we've got all these cut out pieces as well, but I thought we would use this on here and break down the page straight away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of these greens to my stencil. So I'm going to ink the stencil with one of the greens. In this case, I think it was mowed lawn, but we will have a look. It was bundled sage. Tracy doesn't know her colours from Adam. But you can also do this on your non-stick craft sheet, and then you've got more ink you can actually use. So I've used bundled sage. I'm going to use some twisted citron. And I'm not being too regimented, and really you should go light to dark. So I should have done the twisted citron first, then the bundled sage. And then we're going to go to mowed lawn. So we'll just add some of the mowed lawn. And I think I will add a touch more of the bundled sage, just because I love that colour. So you can see that I've got my ink on there, and I'm just going to spritz the stencil with water. Now, what I'm going to do is, let's just turn this over so we can actually see what we've got. And I'm going to grab another piece of kitchen towel. And I'm just going to sort of touch the edges just slightly. Now you can see I've not got all the tickets highlighted there. You can see that I've randomly done this. So I'm just going to take that off there. So you can see I've not sort of inked the whole stencil. So we have the stencil here, and I've just sort of inked most of it. I haven't inked the whole thing. And I'm going to place my stencil down, and then just to make sure it makes good contact with that page. Now I'm using my journal. I'm using the A5 one that I sell online, and the reason I sell it is because the paper or card within the journal is very thick and it takes that moisture beautifully, so it takes it really nicely. So what I'm doing is I'm giving that time just to absorb onto the surface of the card, and the kitchen towel will just mop up anything that seeps outside the area. And you can see I do give that a good minute to sort of absorb onto the page. And you can see now I've actually broke down that page, and you can see there's plenty of ink on there. If you wanted to grab another piece of card, so luckily I've got a square piece of card here, and if I wanted to, I could quite easily spritz this again. There won't be much on there, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter one bit. I can just mop up anything that's on there, and it just breaks that blank page. I could have even put this on the page above, but look at that. Instantly, I've got something to work with quite easily on a card. So I shall save that because it gives me another background to work with, and it works quite nicely. I could even probably get a third print from that quite easily. Just look at that. Look at those colours, just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit of text. So I'm going to take TE45, and it's got this text all about the garden on there. So that's perfect just to use in my background. What I also love is a lot of these stamps have got pieces that you can use for your own ephemera, which I just absolutely adore that. So I'm just going to add a little bit of text, and I've added an arrow, which is very pale on there really. I should really sort of re-add that just so you can see which way up you want your text. And can I still see? You know, let's get a Sharpie pen because that's not exactly. I'll just find my small Sharpie. Because I like to use it the right way up, so we'll grab a piece of card like the back of this piece, and let's just make sure that we've got this the right way. So let's take bundled sage. So we'll stamp it first and make sure that we've got it the right way. I was going to say, not that that is really helps me. Let's grab a darker ink so I can actually see. I'm sure I've got it the right way. Yep. Yes, you have. So I'm just going to use that Sharpie just to show that it should go that way up. And really we should sort of just give that a couple of seconds to dry. So I've just used that on the back just so I can see, and I can keep that card because it does look really good. So I'm going to take a small acrylic block. Now I know there's one on my desk somewhere. There we go. So we'll just add this to the background. So I want to add some text to the background now, just to give some added detail to that background. And I always take it sort of nice and steady. I go lighter first. I can easily sort of add some darker detail should I wish to add some darker detail. And it doesn't matter that my page underneath is all sort of squishy and bumpy, and because I'm just creating a background at the moment, just to give some background detail. So I've got no focal image on there at the moment. I'm concentrating more on my background. I just love that stencil has already given me something to work with. Now, you could quite easily stamp inside these tickets, but sometimes it's nice to do something different and use the whole thing rather than just the pieces. So I'm using bundled sage just to add some stamping, which talks all about the garden. And you can see I've broken that page down beautifully, and it gives me somewhere to go. And I can just take my time and add little bits and pieces. So do I want to add a little bit? See, I don't want to add anything. I want to add my focal image at the end, but not at the moment. So what I can do is I can take my acetate and I can just, see, I want this in the background. This here, I want it in the background. I don't want it as the focal image. So I want that in the background. So just deciding what colour I want to use. Now, I probably want to use permanent inks, but something not too overpowering. So what I'm going to use is 3 colours. Let's take the 3 colours. So I'm going to take Verdant, Sand Dune and Shady Lane. So for me, the Sand Dune is the pale colour, and because I know I've got lumps and bumps underneath here, I'm just going to add my little book underneath. So I'm going to take Sand Dune. So let's take Sand Dune, and I'll ink the whole thing with Sand Dune. So ink the whole thing with Sand Dune. So lots of tapping, just so that you can make sure you've got a good layer of ink on there. So lots of tapping. Then I'm going to go to my next colour, which is Verdant, and I'm going to sort of use the edge of the ink and just tap, tap, tap. And I'm going to use Shady Lane. I've got all these in the shop. There we go. And then I've got a sturdy base to work on, and I'm just going to spend a little bit of time just deciding where I would like that. So let's place that there. Just take a little bit of time to decide where you would like your image. And also, if it's just a background, don't worry too much about a few errors, because you can easily add a circle, a square, a ticket, a postage stamp, whatever you want, and we can cover that up. It's getting some of that beautiful detail in the background. But you can see, I don't ever rush what I'm doing. You know, you can use your stamping platform, because you can put your journal in your stamping platform. But if you haven't got a stamping platform and you've got your acrylic blocks like I use, just give it a little bit longer. Just give it a little bit longer to absorb onto the card, particularly if, like me, you've got this oxide ink on there. And what you need to remember is it's not about pressing so hard that your wrists or hands hurt. It's about just giving it that time and just having a little bit of patience. So just as particularly when you've got a lot of detail on your stamp like this one. Let's give that a lift now. There we go. Just look at that. How gorgeous is that? I'm going to have to move this. Let's move all these bits because you can't see anything. Look at that. I've now broke down the page, but look at that detail just in browns and greens. Just stunning. Absolutely stunning. So I've got that beautiful detail already down on there. Now we can make our own ephemera or bits and pieces that we can add to this, because I've added it all to the stamps. I love that just in its own right, even with nothing else. But what I want to do is add like a floral. So that's sort of my background, and I can extend this if I wish, because on TE, let's bring this in. Let's put that under and just show. You see, now it doesn't matter there's brown down there, because I shall bring some brown to the edges of the other. But you can see now no longer matters. So on this TE45, do you like how I have to question myself? What number? TE45. There's lots of elements that you can also stamp separately to add to your collage should you wish. But what I want to do, Tracy says because she's got hiccups, is I want to add a floral, but not too much. And these florals here on TE48 are, I think they're stunning. So let's pull out TE48. I love to have a little play with the acetate. And you've got a fantastic bold floral on here, and you've got some more delicate florals. So I just adore, let's bring this floral. I adore this floral. It's delicate, but it makes a statement as well. And you can actually add to it with the other bits that I've given you as well, should you wish. But you can see I can stamp over now my background with this floral. Oh, just love it. I adore stamping. So it's deciding. I think we will stamp that in a brown. So shall we stamp that in a brown? So let's bring in our book again. And don't start panicking about stamping on your page, because just because I'm stamping on the page doesn't mean you have to. You can cut it out if you wish. And if it goes wrong, well, we can cut it out. We can always sort it out, can't we? So let's take our Portobello VersaFine Clair. So we'll take the Portobello. Lots of tapping in there. Tap, 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 tap. Don't lose your patience with your stamping. It's worthwhile taking your time. So now I can decide where I want to bring this floral, which is going to take me forever, because I still want it to be part of the stamping I've already done. So I don't want it disjointed. In other words, I don't just want it plonked right to the side. I want it to be part of the stamping I have already done. One finger, that's all you need. The most important thing is allowing it time and using the right ink. If you use the right ink that doesn't dry too quickly, it gives you time. And it gives time for that ink to absorb onto the surface. You don't want an ink that dries too quickly. And that's why I'm a great advocate of the VersaFine Clairs, because they do exactly what you want them to do. So you can see one finger. One finger, you don't have to break your wrist. It's more about having that patience just to give it a little bit of time. Look at that. Just stunning. Look at that. I just love it. And obviously we're going to colour this and shade and everything, but I just love it. Let me just bring in, let me just lift that up. I absolutely love that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to colour this to give it a little bit more life. And I'm going to use my Inktense pencils, which really, if I tidied up a little bit, it really would help. Let's move some of these stamps out of the way. I don't want to sort of put them too far out of the way because I do actually want to use them. Inktense. Don't think I've got the right colours out. I've got my Inktense tin here. Let's see if there's any in here. We want some nice greens, don't we? Let's have a look what we've got. What greens have we got? What colour are they classing you as? Lime. We would like something limey, wouldn't we? And really what you should do, I mean, look at this background on that card that we did. We can do that. What you should do is sort of test your colours. So I'm just going to, yeah, they're fine. That's my quick test. So that's my dark, that's my medium, that's my light. So I've still got my stickers on here, so I know those are all my new colours. So these three are in the last 20, did they do 28? 23 or 28 colours they added at the end. So this is Olivine 1340, Jungle Green 1410, and Lime Green 1535. So let's bring in our brush, move the other ones out of the way at the moment. And then we want a little bit of water. So we've got that up there. And just like I would with my Prismas, I'm going to come in with the darkest colour. But I don't worry too much about having a sharp point on these. I seem to use different pencils differently, but I still blend colour to colour, pencil to pencil. So we've got our first colour, which is the Olivine, which I'm classing as my darkest colour in there. And I'm going to do one floral at a time. I'm then going to go to the Jungle Green and come into the previous colour with the Jungle Green. So come into that previous colour with the Jungle Green. And the card in here, it's not paper, that's on the pages, it's such a good, it's so thick, it's fantastic quality. So then I'm going to come to the Lime Green 1535 and blend into the other colours with that Lime Green. I'm using my Inktense pencils because I've got them, and I always promise myself I'm going to use whatever I recommend, and I'm going to make sure they don't sit on my desk doing nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push up into that colour. So push up into the colour. Just clean my brush a little bit, pick up the water, take off the excess and push up into the dark colour. So I'll push that dark colour right to the middle. So it's the dark colour that is going into this dark area here. So push that right in. There we go. Now, I don't want you going in with water with your pencils. So I'm going to grab, am I even going to, yes, I'm going to grab a little, do you like I've now got an arrow on here from my stamp. So I'm going to grab a little paint palette. None of my little plastic paint palettes are clean, but there you go. But we're going to use the paint palette. And what I'm going to do is take my sharpener, and it's the dark one, Olivine. Let's just add some sharpenings to the paint palette. So I've got some Olivine there. Let's bring in this pale colour and add some sharpenings there. There we go. Let's bring all that out. That's just bits of paper because Tracy hasn't taken her paper off the pencils. Now I've got the sharpenings in here. Let's take that paper out. Let's spritz with water. Give that a spritz, just let that do its trick. You can still, once you've dried it, so let's dry this again. Oh, I've done it again. I always unplug this, you see. I don't leave it plugged in. You should never leave your heat tool plugged in. So give this a dry. Now you can come in quite easily with your pencils again and just add another layer of the colour and repeat the process. Absolutely no problem at all. You can just repeat the process. Or you can come in and you've got your pigment here that I've got from the sharpenings. And then let's take a little bit off. You can come in with that darker colour. Do you like how I sort of take it off, then bring it back in again? So you can come in with your darker colour. Make sure you haven't got too much moisture on there. I'd got a little bit too much moisture as far as I'm concerned. Take that pigment off and then come into the pale colour. Can you see the pigment? How pigmented these pencils are. They're fantastic pencils. Take off the excess moisture because I don't want it swimming away with me. And the reason you can see sort of my brush looking frayed at the end is it's just splayed out a little bit because this is not an expensive brush. So let's just bring in a little bit to these as well. A little bit. So I can rinse my brush again. I can pick up this darker colour, bring this in so you can see. Take off the excess so that I've not got too much moisture, and I can just bring in a little bit of the dark. You can see I sort of dab a little bit of that moisture off there because you don't want too much moisture. So I'm just bringing a little bit of colour. I can bring in a little bit more darkness there. So you've still got all this pigment you can then use. We can use it for some splatters, etc. So let's move these out of the way. I'm then going to just give that a little bit of a dry. Once the ink tents are dry, they are permanent. We'll need to remember that's over there. So we're giving that a dry and they are then permanent. I can then come in with, I think it's called Madder Brown, am I right? Yes, Madder Brown 1920. And I can just add a little bit more depth with a little touch of the Madder Brown. Just a little touch of that Madder Brown. And then I think my brush will be wet enough just to moisten that. Absolutely. Let's grab a little bit of water. So I've used that Madder Brown just to put a darker edge on there. And then I can quite easily come back in just to the pale colour that I've got the sharpenings from. Just take off the excess water and then I can just come in again with another layer of that just to bring it a little bit more. And if I wash this, there's still going to be beautiful pigment in there because it's very highly pigmented. So I'm going to give this a dry again. We obviously want to add some touches of white as well. But at the moment, if you wanted to keep like that, we've got no cut out bits or anything. It's all flat. It's entirely up to you what you do with that. So then I'm going to come in and I'm just going to add a little bit of my grey ink tent, which is called Chinese ink. the one I use all the time. And I'm going to add a little bit of shading down here. So let's grab a little bit of water. And the only reason I've got this kitchen towel here is to give it, just to give you different sort of tips each time. Should you not, I mean, I don't bother the fact that it touches my pages underneath, but I know some of you don't, maybe not like that. So if you don't like that, put your kitchen roll underneath and it'll absorb that for you. It'll absorb the moisture or anything that goes to the next page. So we've got some beautiful shading there as well. You can also now come in and add your touches of white. Make sure your page is dry. Just adding, don't overpower your page with the touches of white. You just want a little touch of white. I'm holding that pen very lightly. Let's add a little bit of white there. So don't go overboard with your white. So I'm just adding little touches of white here. If you want to, you can add a little bit of dimension to your floral, should you wish. Don't go overboard, she says, and then Tracy carries on adding. But I will come back and add another layer of that white anyway. But I'll show you what we've got so far, just so that you can, I've got wires everywhere. Move them up there, she says as she knocks the heat tool. But just so you can see our page so far. And I'm going to add a little bit of shading around here as well. So what I'm going to do now is, because we've got our, what did I say to you that I won't lose? Let's bring in this stencil. Because we've now got our stencil, I don't want to put that back in the packaging because that'll irritate me. We've now got these little tickets, so we can create our own bits of ephemera. So we can add an ephemera piece here. If we take another ticket, and I can add one there, that'll be the perfect size. So I've got those two tickets. I just want a scrap of card, and this is where, when you've got loads of scrap, this is perfect for that. So we'll take our little ticket and we'll then grab the vintage photo. Let's take the vintage photo. So I'm going to take the vintage photo and I'm going to just wipe some of this brown onto my little ticket, just on the edges of the ticket. Might be even easier to lift that up a little bit. Let's add a little bit more. So you can see I've added a little bit of brown to that. I can spritz the little ticket with water. Can you still see this? You can. And then I'm just going to add this little ticket here. Let's just give that a dab and give that a few seconds, because now we can create our own little bits of ephemera. Nice and easy to create, and you've got these bits and pieces to use over and over again. They'll last you a lifetime. But I'm just dabbing that just so that I soak up any moisture and I give that a little bit of time. Now I know the other ticket's exactly the same size, so I can do it a second time. But it gives me the idea for placement where I've added this one here. So we'll just lift this up. And I've now got my ticket on there. It doesn't matter that you've got some underneath here, because you're going to cut this out as your little bits of ephemera. Now, because I've got my kitchen towel here, I can also work quite cleanly. If you're the kind of person that doesn't like too much mess, you know that that doesn't bother me. But it's nice to show different ways if you don't like particularly having mess. So I can spritz this again with water, and then I can add this ticket onto my card. Let's lift this up so you can see. We'll then just dab that with some dry kitchen towel just to give that time to do its thing, because we can cut those tickets out. You can also use your tickets within the packet just to get placement and decide where you're going to place things. So let's give this a little bit of time. Don't be in a rush. Give that oxide time to do its job, to oxidize, which is what it does with that water on there. So let's lift this up. There we go. And that one is more covered than that one. If you don't want it more covered, let's just place this back. I tend to keep these in the packet and then I put them in my wallet, because then I don't lose those, because they're valuable. It means that I don't have to, you know, I can create my own ephemera. So if you want to take a little bit of moisture colour out of that, just add some water to your kitchen towel and you can take some of the colour out of there. It's entirely up to you. So we're getting this nice and wet here. And then you've got the tickets that we can cut out. So let's take our scissors and you can cut these out now. Nice and easy to cut out because it's just a straight line with a bit of a curve. And this now gives us our own faux ephemera. There you go, so you've got your little ticket there. Now we've got another one here. And I'd say that isn't actually perfect, but it doesn't matter, does it? There we go. And I just love the fact that I can just add my own little bits and pieces to the project. So I can quite easily now add whatever I want. This is now getting in my way. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me, which is standard practice for Tracy. That she sneezes all the time. Don't ask me why. So we've got little bits and pieces we can add to our tickets now. So if I bring in that copy of paper that's soaking wet, just so you can see, let's move that up there. So we've got our lovely tickets, and you can have a little play now with what you want to add. I could add that. Or I could add a part. You see, this is where I spend most of my time. I could add part of that butterfly. Let's add, honestly, I have so much fun just adding little bits and pieces, my own sort of ephemera. And I'm going to stamp that in the brown. I'll stamp the whole thing because it's far easier than trying to judge which bit I don't want. So I'm going to add a little bit of that butterfly on there, like so, because it then coordinates with the butterfly we've got in the background. So let's take, so I've separated these bits, and then you can continue with your collage. So I'm going to add a little bit of the butterfly here. So now I'm creating my own ephemera, and my own ephemera doesn't have to be a whole image. It can be a collaged piece of ephemera, which I also love. So we've got this little sort of ticket here where you can add little bits of it to the background. So let's take that, and we can add little bits of this, you see. So I can ink the number there, and I can take the number. So this one's going this way. And again, because it's ephemera, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be crumpled up, anything. But you can now create your own collage of ephemera. You don't have to be a whole image. So I've got those little bits of ticket added there. Then we can take down the side here. There's little numbers down the side here that I can then add that way. So I can add a little bit of that. And I'll lift this up just so that you can see that you've then got your own little bits of ephemera pieces. There we go. So you can just make it look completely different. And that's why I like the fact that you've got so many stamps on an A5 stamp set. They're not all sold individually. I could quite easily put all those on an A7 stamp, but they're not. They're on an A5 stamp, which makes them sort of more cost effective because they're all on that A5. So we can add our ephemera where I've placed it before. Place that ticket back. But I can also use them for placement, you see, so I can decide where I want to add the placement of the tickets as well. And again, I've got that advantage of the camera just to see where I want to place everything. That really helps. So let's stick this down. And place this here. And then our other little ticket. I love the fact that I can do this. Let's just give that time for me to, that's it. Just give that a little bit of time just to stick. Let's move that out of the way. And then I can just add a little bit of shading just around. I think this pencil needs a little bit of a sharpen. Let's just add a little bit of shading around there. And again, this is beautiful card in the journal, so it works really nicely. Oh, I can't do that every time. I dip the wrong end of the brush. So just blend that just with a little bit of water, just to give that a little bit of shading. Blend this around here. Maybe a little bit darker there. There we go. There's hardly any water on there now, Tracy. So just pick up a little bit more of that water. There we go. Just so we can shade that a little bit more. And I'm going to add a little bit, yes I am, a little bit of shading just around this floral a little bit. There we go. Just to make it pop a little bit more. Just drag that out. Move my journal. It's far easier to move your journal than move your hands, but there we go. Let's just blend that out a little bit. And we'll just add a little bit more down here. That's it. Just to give that a little bit more shading. I'll hold this up each time just so that you can see exactly where I'm going but I just love those sort of greens and browns. What we're going to do then, where's the little acrylic block? Because I've got a little bit of brown here, so that it looks like it's a design feature, we're going to take, I've still got this ticket here, I've still got the big ticket lying around on my desk and I cannot pick it up. There we go. I'm going to take my acrylic block and I'm just going to spritz that with water. And then, just so it looks like it's a design feature, she says, let's put some kitchen roll underneath. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of the brown just around the edges, just so it looks, so it's more of a design feature. Let's just take a little bit more. I'll take my brush this time. And we'll just add a little bit of that, just so it all looks like we did this on purpose and we wanted to. Let's just spritz that with water so it's a little bit more loose. There we go. Let's add a little bit up here. Make that nice and loose with the colour, because then my page looks more considered, rather than, oops, Tracy, let the colours dribble. So it just looks more considered then. Give that moisture a little bit of time to react with the vintage photo, just so that you get that oxidised feel to it, so it matches the other side. Give that a little bit of a dry. Quite a bit of moisture in there, so just give that a dry. I can remove this now. And this is really for those of you that don't like to let the colour go onto your second page. And once you close your page will go flat. But there's quite a bit of moisture on there, so I'm just giving that a really good dry. There we go. And once you close that page, that will nicely flatten out. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to grab TE45 again, which is here, the Dog Rose and Butterfly. We'll take our text and I'm going to take the Portobello. Now that's going to be darker, so we're going to bring some of that darker text just here and there into our page, just to bring in some darker touches to coordinate with this, but I'm sort of leaving it so that you've got that nice flow. It's just not, it's not stamped hiddledy-piddledy. There is some thought into it. So you've, for me, you've got a nice flow here. So I'm not sort of stamping it over here, because then it's just disjointed. So let's add a little bit there. There we go. So just adding a little bit of stamping in that darker colour, just here and there, but remaining in our sort of composition. Then we want a word, so I'm going to use the word nature. And then I'm going to stamp in black the actual sort of word that I want in the foreground. So I'm going to just put my little book underneath, and I'm going to use my Nocturne ink. So let's use that Nocturne ink. There we go. And again, I don't want it just stamped anywhere. I want it to be quite considered. So let's add that here. So again, I'm just giving that a few moments just to absorb onto the surface. If you want to cut it out, that's entirely up to you. And then I'm going to add a little bit of shading underneath our word nature. Just so that we blend that. There we go, so that's quite prominent on there. I still want to add some touches of white to this that I need to re-put in there. Let's bring in the little book again. And then I just want to add, let's put this back just so that I've got one stamp set out of my way. Place that out of the way. And then I just want to take the little bird from TE44. Take our little bird. And I want that in black. I'm just going to add my little bird on here. Again, not rushing that, just giving that a few seconds just to make an impression. I think we can get rid of that bit now. And then what I'm going to do is just grab my Posca pen, and I'm going to come in now and sort of redo those touches of white, just so they pop a little bit more. You can come in and sort of add more touches of white should you wish. I don't want to add too much because it just doesn't warrant that. I'm just adding a few little touches that I want to add. And then I'm going to add some splatters, and purposely making sure that I don't really aim for the word nature, which is quite easy on this page really, to not aim at that. Let's just give that a little dry, just so that the Posca pen doesn't react too much with our background. You could also use the Inktense pencil, the colour that we've got remaining in the paint palette, and you could add a few green splatters as well, should you wish. That's entirely up to you. So just give this a little bit of a dry. You could also, if you wanted to, add more shading to your ticket, but for me, I want the ticket to be in the background. So I don't want the tickets to be in the foreground. However, I'm going to just stamp the floral again, just the flower head, and I'm just going to ink that. So let's take the Portobello again. Let me just stamp the floral again. Let's just cut this out. So this is the floral that I've got here. So I'm just cutting that out, mainly because I just want a little play. This stem, this floral stem, it's really easy to just add more to the stem. So it's great because you've got other little florally bits in the actual stamp set that you can actually add to the stem, which works really nicely. And sometimes I always cut bits and pieces out just so I can have a little play, as in if I want to. Let me just, you see, when you see the green, it dissolves into the background. But look when you put that on the top. So always learn. So yes, we've coloured that in. We may have wasted our time, but not necessarily, because one, you've learned colour techniques, but two, always, you know, there's nothing wrong with saying, no, I've changed my mind. Nothing wrong with that, because this now just pops against that background. Or you can move it down a tad so that it's part of the stem. I quite like it just like this, so that it really pops against that background. Lift it off, see which you prefer, but I like it just like this, where it pops just in its own, on its own. So I'm going to add that to mine. You may want to keep yours in the green. That's entirely up to you. But what I'll do is I'll only stick the centre area. Then you can see a little bit of that green underneath. There we go. So we'll just take the stamp again, and we'll take these little bits here, or this little bit. So that's Portobello again. So don't be frightened of saying, no, 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 it needs something more, or... But I've given you two options there. If you want to keep it in the green, you've got that option. You know, you'll see things differently with your eyes as what I see with mine. So let's grab the Posca pen. Let's just reiterate that little bit of white there. Let's bring in the adhesive again and just add a little bit of that. So that really does then pop against that background. There's nothing wrong with sometimes saying no, it needs to pop a little bit more. So I'm even going to do the little one here, just that tiny one. So let's take this one. I'm even going to cut that out. And that's why, you know, actually having a play in your journal is a good thing, because that's where you can practice and think, no, that might need more. And then if you want a card idea, you can come to your journal and you've got an idea straight away. There we go. Let's add that there. That's it. Now let's have a look. Oh, yes. Just beautiful. Just love it. But you've got a couple of options there of what you would like to do. So it's entirely up to you then how you want to sort of take that. You know, you could add, oh, I can't speak. You could add, this is why it's important to play. So let's take the floral again. And I know I've heard some people say, why would you watch a video that's an hour long? Well, not every video can be 15 minutes or 5 minutes. If you want to go into proper detail about how to do things and how to consider things, how to change things, how to correct things, you can't always do that in 5 minutes. I personally don't know what the rush is, but I have seen some posts on social media that say, I never watch a video that's an hour long, it's too long. Well, I personally think you're missing out on some details if you don't, but we're all individual, and I suppose we all like different things, don't we? So let's just cut this out. So if you wanted to, let's go around this. Obviously, there's always the fast forward button as well. around here, there we go. You could easily, if you wanted to, add another one here and make your floral look completely different, which I love as well. And if you wanted to colour that in green, you could, but I actually like that. So I'm going to add that one. And then I will call my page done. But there's so many ways you can change it up. You can keep it green. You can keep it this colour. You can add one floral. You can add two florals. Whatever floats your boat. So I hope you've enjoyed that little journal page. And obviously eventually we'll do another page that coordinates with it on the opposite side. Maybe really paired back. But I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope you enjoyed the process. So love to all. And I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.